obscure disparities within Asian Americans. So now I'm going to fast forward to this bill that again, President Advisory Commission of Asian Americans. There is established in the Department of Health and Human Services the President's Advisory Commission on Asian Americans. The commission shall be led by 2 chairs. The development monitoring, yada yada yada. This whole thing. I just need to get to. All right, so here we go. The initiative shall advance these efforts, identify and eliminate any existing institutional policies or barriers within federal programs, improve safety, access to justice, and violence prevention for Asian Americans, including by preventing, reporting, addressing, and backtracking acts of hate and bias, promote inclusion and belonging for Asian Americans, including by expanding public education and knowledge of Asian Americans. Wow, that sounds like when Black people asked for the same thing, critical race theory, it was a big issue, but for Asian Americans, guess what? It's okay.
Yes, comprehension is so sad.
My comprehension is
He's a commission. He did an EO for a commission, for a study, because they're left out of the data.
That was for
legislation.
No, it was a separate article.
You just read it. I interpreted what you just read.
No, that was a separate article.
Do what you want to search for commission. Okay. All right.
I don't know what's going on here. You can't write legislation for a specific race. When he did that executive order was putting together a group, right? It was a group to study what the fuck was going on in that community. That's it. It was a group. They have a bunch of groups for each of these communities. We have one for our community. What's going on here? This shit is about civil rights and anti-hate. That's it. And if you actually look at the legislation that they did pass, that they used the word Asian in, it addressed everyone. It wasn't just for them.
So anti-hate is not something that doesn't affect Black communities.
Use another nigga on that. That's all you want.
I don't want to be the nigga on that. That's a problem. You want to be the bitch on that, not me.
You don't read and you can't comprehend.
You want to be the bitch on that, not me.
Yeah. Hey. You gotta go to this part, bro? Nah. Really? Come on.
Why the chefs call me a nigga? I have to use that word at all.
Nah, you good.
But she didn't call you out your name.
I called you what you want.
Hey, ML.
Hey, I'm fine, people.
Good to see you. We haven't seen you in place in a while. You have
I was on vacation and social media break.
You failed. Period.
I failed.
Mm-hmm.
This is really weird. People don't even understand. Like, people come up with me. This rich guy that just came off the fucking stage that you put in the Go. This rich guy that's so well read doesn't understand fucking simple fucking legislation or executive orders or what the executive order was for. Something's wrong. Like, something's seriously wrong with fucking Americans. Because every one of y'all that come up here that's fucking MAGA or says you don't want to vote or says dumb shit like I vote for the terrorists I know or the racists I know, a whole Black woman, the racists I know. Y'all are crazy. Your mother should have squeezed the legs when you was coming out.
Or she should have swallowed before she was getting fucked.
Swallow, and there you go.
Like that on a napkin.
Hey, yo, no.
What I don't understand, can you hear me back?
Well, they're all
Like, this is
saying,
the first time I heard you. Can y'all hear me?
yes, we can, son.
Okay, thank you. What I don't understand is why these MAGAs are so geeked to be part of a party that kicked their Black asses out 50 years ago. I don't understand. They literally, when it was the Black People's Party, they literally turned around and said, we don't want y'all. So I don't understand why they going so hard for the fucking MAGAs. I don't get it.
That's something we'll never get. That's just Democrats have to be careful. Democrats have to do everything guys were punished or dragged. That's it. I mean, he said it. It's like if he doesn't get every single thing that he wants, then fuck us, we ain't shit. That's basically what he said. He wants 10 things. We gotta give him the 10 things. If we give him 8, he's rather just vote for anarchy.
And I don't understand why. I get the Palestinian thing, the Gaza thing, but why they don't understand that Kamala could not. She was under strict orders of what she could say and what she could not say. She was still the vice president of the United States. So I don't understand why they couldn't understand that. Trump could say anything he wanted because he wasn't president. He wasn't vice president. He was just somebody running for office. So he could say whatever the fuck he wanted, and then everything that he promised, you see what happened when he didn't shit. But no, $5 trillion added to the deficit.
That's exactly the case. I learned that as a DNC member. When the president is a Democrat, the president runs the party, so everything is done from the president. You can't move without the president saying so. So yeah, exactly like you said, she could only do so much.
And not to mention, if a Democrat was to say half the stuff that Donald Trump said, they will not be getting a vote. They're going to see from their own party. And that's the truth.
Did y'all see what he posted in the chat?
No, I'm not gonna vote.
That hate crime, that he's a hate crime bill. And that was just specifically for Asians as well.
Well, maybe we should tell him that we Asian in here. Maybe he should know that.
But I still can't believe that people are still talking about the Asian crime deal. Like,
Because they don't understand it. And they think just because it says the Asian crime bill, that it wasn't for everybody. They don't read, they don't research, they don't understand. It's just ridiculous.
Well, what happens is they allow someone to tell them what they need to know versus going and doing their own research. It's the difference. You know what I mean?
the lady, we have for years told people the truth. And what I find so frustrating is that you see them in another room or another conversation and they would regurgitate the exact false point that you had corrected and provided evidence, a source to back up whatever your
We lost my internet broke. No, we lost him now. He sounded like he's going to the tunnel.
Yeah,
We kind of lost Patty too.
yeah, I'm in a bad zone.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, so yeah, I was saying that one thing that's so frustrating is that you meet certain people on this app and you have a conversation with them. You refute what they say, and you provide sources to back up whatever premise you. But then you sit in another room and they regurgitate the same shit that you would push back on, that you would debunk before. Like apparently they didn't learn anything new. That's I find to be the most infuriating part of having conversations with MAGA.
I think that's because you assume that they want to learn.
That's a good point. But what's preventing them from actually consuming new information?
They don't want new information. That's how demagoguery Korean ideologues work. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what you say. Doesn't matter what proof you have. It was just like we were listening to something. I don't know if it was last night or this morning. And the guy said to the woman, he's like, I'm gonna give you this data and these facts. And she said, I won't believe you. What do you do with that?
Wow.
What do you do with that? There are some of these people for whom spreading the idea is more important than understanding the implications of the idea or gaining information that may shift them off of the idea. You just have some ideologues. They stuff for whatever.
And I just want to say this because I have a client that I just spoke to who screwed herself by asking ChatGPT for advice. I'm like, no, for legal advice. Now I have to clean it all up, and it's gonna take me a lot longer. Like, it's so hard to fucking undo a mess, right? I think a lot of people are relying on ChatGPT as accurate, and it's you know it's not accurate all the time. And please don't use it for legal advice. Oh my god, I'm so annoyed.
Man, that's wild. Yeah, the AI's hallucinated. It's a common occurrence, and yeah, people should know that. And yeah, exactly. Don't don't take advice. But you know, ChatGPT told me I should spend more time on Clubhouse, so that's why I'm here.
But you guys saw this week there's a judge who censured a lawyer for using ChatGPT and submitting a docket with case law that doesn't exist or a precedent that doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's happened.
Made that shit up.
That's happened multiple times where lawyers have used ChatGPT and it gives it cites case law that doesn't exist.
It happened to one of Trump's lawyers. They caught it in one of his cases.
Yes.
I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same thing as like Wikipedia. Like you use that as a jumping off point for research. You don't use it as the end.
Yeah, it's just
Exactly.
People that come out provide a source and it's Wikipedia.
The only source on Clubhouse for me is Dr. AG. I'll say, Dr. AG said.
And you are a wise woman saying.
Because she's an encyclopedia and dictionary.
And now I'm an archive.
It just keeps growing. Hey, Clint, what you doing, Clint? Why you down there, Clint? Where you at, Clint? That shit funny. Easy, and you know what's real sad? Is you
We listen and we don't judge. I got kids from my uncle. All three of his and my baby daddy think the kids is his.
you see that video I sent you, Patty? It was hours ago. No, I'm really.
Research, you don't use it as the end.
able to encourage people to follow them. Like, that's not what we're seeing in these, entities and others in the world.
I guess what I was referring to is people who I know. People I know. There is no incentive for them to just say free Palestine on their fucking head.
What she's standing up for is for speed.
I love it.
Thank you, sis.
Smash, Mary Kill.
How much do you guys pay for it in Chicago?
We don't actually rent it, we own it. With the HOA, we pay around $2,700.
Can I tour your guys' apartment?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Welcome to my vintage apartment, built in 1920 by a female architect, Emma Kennett. This is my hallway. This is my entryway. I wanted to always to be like cozy and warm, so I have this bench, like decorative coffee books. That's a vintage art that I got from a vintage store. Beautiful art piece that represents my country. Welcome to the living room where me and my fiance and my little dog hang out a lot.
I think that the idea of tenure should get thrown out of the fucking window. I think that if you're a bad teacher, it should be easier to fire. The fact that you're responsible for the education of the youth of this country, and you've got a job that it's one of the hardest to fire you, it's backwards. We should make it very easy to fire teachers. No, I completely agree that we should make it easier to fire teachers, because I don't, in my opinion, I don't think your issue is necessarily that they're overpaid. I think their issue is that they're getting paid something that would be considered overpaid for people that don't have the skill set of what it should be to be an effective teacher. It's because I feel like the majority of those competent teachers left after the pay. And when the kids started getting way fucking crazy, just like, yeah, I'm not getting paid enough to do this shit. And then they dipped out. And that was it. Those are the good teachers that we had that pushed their fucking point after I don't know how long we're doing it. And then we had to get some shitty fucking replacements of just anybody we could find to make sure there's an adult in that classroom in some way, shape, or form. And then, yeah, it seems like they're being overpaid for the work that gets put out because everybody fucking left because of the pay. And now we only have the shit scrabblers that are there to work for I don't know what. Unless you get like a fucking, a diamond in the rough like myself, and then you get someone who actually gives a shit about wanting to teach the kids and set them up for the future, right? You get half the people that are there just because they need some cash for part-time or want to be a substitute fucking teacher that accidentally ended up staying in the classroom.
So I don't think it's all completely on the teacher, especially when you have some parents that, as much as the teacher does teach well, as much as the teacher does do things in the classroom, as much as he does try to keep shit engaged, they don't discipline their fucking kids. Their kids don't pay attention in class. They're super fucking disrespectful. When they get back home, they act out that same fucking disrespect they give to me to their parents. Those same parents don't do shit but kneel and bow the knee to their fucking child like they run the household and not them. So a lot of the time, while I will say it's not like teachers have no fault in this whatsoever, because I completely agree. There's some of my coworkers that I don't think should be fucking teachers because they teach like shit, and I wouldn't want to be in that classroom. But at the same time, it's not like I can't also understand that, hey, their classroom might be shitty, but you can't be a good fucking parent either. It goes on both ends. It starts at home and ends in the school. Both have responsibility.
Yeah, there's other problems with the education system. The fact that we have compulsory education, and in some states you refuse to allow parents to send their kids, direct their tax dollars to allow somebody to escape these failing schools and to be able to use those funds more wisely to put kids in an education modality that might be better suited to their kid. I'm a big believer in educational freedom. I think that you should, as a parent, be able to direct those tax dollars in any way you seem fit to be able to deal with the education of your kids. But there's many people that disagree with this. What they prefer is that you trap people into failing schools. And you make it compulsory that the parent must send their kid to this failing school. And by the way, if you don't send your kid to the failing school, you can actually go to jail because education is compulsory. And so this is the craziness that we have in this country, where we understand that the importance of education is going to impact our future. Yet we allow our system to be erected in such a way that we almost guarantee that the system is going to fail. The higher education works really, really well. I think we still do a good job of educating people. But when the federal government got involved in that, the cost went up. You paying for backing the loans, and when the government backs the loans for higher education, the lenders can give the money to anybody. Doesn't matter what their credit risk is. And if the person defaults on that loan, it doesn't matter, the lender's going to get it because the taxpayers are going to foot the bill. I think the entire education system, K through 12, as well as the university level, is broken fundamentally, and we need to fix it. But there's people that don't even want to have that conversation because they're too fixated on
Mojo, would you say you're like laissez-faire capitalist, or like, I guess, what's your kind of compass?
Oh yeah, I am definitely a capitalist in its purest form. I would, if I had my way, I would the same way that you guys want to separate church and state, I would want to separate the market and state. I don't believe that the way that we allow government to interfere and put their hand on the scale of the market makes sense at all. In fact, I would completely privatize education if it were left up to me. The only thing that I think that the government should be spending taxpayer dollars on is to fund the military, fund police, and to fund courts. That's the extent of the government that I think we should pay for at the federal.
And I guess in terms of, I guess what I'm gathering from hearing you speak, because I've heard you speak a bit, not like a ton, but I guess you're not necessarily looking for equality or even equity. You are more so looking for maximalization of profit and the freedom of a market to do that of its own, like however it wants to do it.
Well, first of all, that's a good catch. I don't believe in equality. I think it's an illusion. Milton Friedman said that if you put equality in front of liberty, you get neither. But if you put liberty in front of equality, you get heapings of both. I think he's right about that. I think we should recognize that people are not equal. The knowledge, skill, and ability of the people on this stage are all very different. And I think we should factor that in. The only thing that we should be focused on when it comes to being equal is equal protection under the law. And I think when people are fighting for equality of outcomes or even equality of opportunity, they're actually disregarding and fighting against the notion of equal protection under the law. Fundamentally, I believe that the best system that we could have is one where you're free to succeed or to fail. The one thing I disagree with is you said that the focus should be on profits. That's the goal for business owners, is to be profitable. But my concern is more on the freedom to allow businesses to fail or succeed. If they're profitable, it's because they ran a good business. If they fail, then so be it. That's part of the process also. I definitely don't think that you should be guaranteed a fucking profit. I think you should have to work for that.
Definitely. And then the last thing, because that gives me a good idea, and it just frames, further future questions. The last thing, when you say, when you talk about how, the separation of state and market, I guess, kind of what comes up in my head is, before we had certain laws, there were things that I think were objectively bad, like having children working in coal mines and that sort of conditions. So I think that I view at least some level of state intervention as necessary. What's your kind of stance on that side?
I think understanding that the harm reduction is what we should be aiming for. Some child labor laws are written ridiculously. While I don't think kids should work in a coal mine, you have to think about, at a time, my grandfather who raised me worked in a coal mine when he was a child in the state of Colorado. And the economic conditions were such where he and his brothers needed to find employment. They quit school to go find employment, and the only place that was hiring was the coal mine. And so when the alternative is that you starve or the kids go find a way to make money, I would love to see a world in which kids don't have to do that. But what we've done is, in this overzealous, we can't have children working, we're now preventing somebody that, let's say, owns a floral shop from teaching their kid any business, for example. And I don't think that there's a harm in letting a child learn how to trim flowers, for example. And so I think there's different labor that you can put kids at. I certainly am not an advocate for children, going into diamond mines. I'm not a supporter of that. But I also think that blaming the state for the lack of regulation is not really addressing the problem in the first place. The first thing that I would look to is, where were the parents that allowed their kid to go and work in the coal mine, and what were the parents doing? And then if their circumstances was so dire that working in the coal mine was actually going to improve the quality of their life, I think it would be immoral for the government to intervene in that.
I'd like to hear your position on power, away from the capital, the money, paychecks. What forces are in play that gives the powerful, say, a business owner, to make 400 times what his employee makes with let's say their staff is 10,000. How does that make sense that people just bow down like that?
Well, why would we ever want to put a cap on what somebody,
in comparison to what they pay?
I mean, I can answer that, because when that's kind of the inherent issue, is when you have one person or this very small group of people. I'm not talking about small businesses, of course, but if you have a huge corporation, and the CEO is able to basically give themselves kind of whatever, and they're the business is successful. There's nothing stopping them from more equitably sharing those that sense, it's not that I'm advocating for a cap on what they can make. I'm more so advocating for a cap in the ratio. Because the argument that people make is like, okay, you know, if you're a CEO, you've got all this expertise, you know what it takes to run the business. I totally agree. People have no idea what goes into, you know, run, especially like a really, really big company. So I'm with that. But like, is one person working 4,000? Are they 4,000 times working? You know, that much harder, 10,000 times harder. I mean, like there should be some sort of like.
Well, if somebody builds a business that allows them to hire employees, and employment is a two-way street. It's I put out a job rec, you apply to it, you come and interview for it. Typically, you'll comb your hair nice, you'll shave, and you'll put on your Sunday best, and you'll say, "I want this job," knowing what the pay is. Nobody's asking you to work for nothing. In fact, they're not grabbing people with a net off the street to come work for them. People are coming to that business and saying, that job that you need done and the pay that you offer, I would like that. And so that's a contract. And so when the employees are applying for those jobs, and the prices are set based on the value of the work that gets done. And again, that value is not based on how much profit the business makes. It's based on how easily replaceable you are. If the job, if you're a warehouse a worker or you're a driver, it's not to say that the work that you're doing isn't physically demanding. It just means that there's a lot of people that can do physically demanding work, or that they can drive the vehicle. All they need is a clean driving record, and we can get them to do that. If you can use GPS and you can unload the truck and you're physically capable of doing that, there is a lot of people that can do that. And just the fact that you have the job doesn't mean that you're entitled to the money that the company makes. Where I think that we would find some common ground, and I think a better thing to look at is the role that government plays in these businesses. What you guys are asking for, it seems like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is some sort of regulation. You talk about ratios between C-level pay and the worker bee pay. I would rather have the government out of that, and I would also like the government to not provide subsidies to these businesses. I would also like to make sure that the taxpayer dollars are not going to bail out failed companies, especially in the banking sector, where when the bank is failing, we do wealth transfer from the taxpayers to the banks because the banks were in quote-unquote crisis, and then the money that was given to them by the taxpayers, they then used to pay bonuses to the executives. There's definitely some obscene things that go on in corporations. There's no doubt about it. But from my vantage point, all of those obscenities that we see come from the fact that the government has an unhealthy relationship in the business sector. They create regulatory agencies that provide favor to specific companies within certain industries. They deem that some companies are too important to fail, and they invest in them in the beginning. They invest in them in the middle, and even if the business fails, they give them more money. I think all of that should stop. I don't believe that the government should be giving these handouts. What we have today is exactly what Benito Mussolini envisioned in Italy. The idea of corporatism, the unity of government and corporations. So I think that I have a lot of smoke for corporations. I just point it in a different direction. The solution that it seems like you guys are asking for is for the government to get more involved. I'm suggesting that the government should not be.
You know, that's actually pretty interesting because one of my core issues with capitalism is I've talked to a few people about this, and I don't think I've seen anyone really give me an example or breakdown of how it doesn't lead to corporatism, because naturally what's going to happen is certain companies will outperform others. I'm totally in agreement. We're not equal. Some people are going to do better. That's just a fact. Which isn't a problem. a certain size, then you can start doing things like, buying out the competition, or, if it's really that dirty of a game, you can kill off the competition, or you can buy politicians. I think that the reason that we have this deep, because I agree, I mean, honestly, a lot of what you said, I don't fundamentally, is like, I don't think anything you said is false. I think, we're seeing it different ways, but like, I agree, like, yeah, there's too much of that, but I think that's intentional. It's as a result of these corporations and kind of, super PACs, all that sort of thing. Like, you get these very large sums of money between very few people, and then they use that money to influence the government and actually, like, effectively give both the government and by extension themselves more power. So how do you have a capitalist system that doesn't lead to?
I think it's very simple. The distinction of a corporation doesn't even need to be made. In my opinion, having a corporation is a recognized government distinction. If we just got, you don't need to be a corporation to be a company. And then when you structure as a corporation, you now have different government protections. I don't want the companies to be protected by the government. The only thing I want them to be protected from is overregulation. When I look at the biggest expansion in the U.S. economy, it was a time when regulation was very non-existent. From 1870 to 1900, you saw the industrial revolution. We went right. We came out of we had slavery. Then we go through Reconstruction, and then all of a sudden we deregulate the market, and economic expansion is better than it's been in the entirety of human history in a 30-year period. And then the response to that was that we saw, some companies made a lot of money. That made certain people very rich. Maybe we should put some regulations. And again, I'm going to be that guy. If you think about, some people that want total control of the market, and then there's somebody like myself that's saying very, very little, right? I'm a minimalist. I can make the argument for no interference at all. And there's going to be a meeting in the middle. I think what's happened is we've allowed the people that are scared people that these corporations are evil. And I don't think the corporations are fundamentally evil. I think it's the collusion between government and corporations that creates this problem. I cannot, for the life of me, and I challenge you guys, find one company in the entire history of the United States that became a monopoly in their industry without the assist of the government, without a subsidy, or without regulatory favor, or without some sort of infusion of cash or government contracts. Show me a company that became a monopoly that got there without the government's help. And that's the problem. You don't see organic monopolies because when the government stays out of it, we do have competition. And when we have competition, what we see is more efficiency, what we see is lower cost, and what we see is innovation. We see everything moves in the positive direction when we increase competition. And if you want to increase competition, you have to deregulate them.
That's definitely an interesting point. I think I'm gonna have to look into that and see, because I definitely get what you're saying, and I can think of some examples as well. And really, I'm forgetting now, because I remember what was it, Ford versus Dodge, that kind of led to it was one of the foundational, I guess, legal outcomes that kind of led to the shareholder obligation thing. And I feel like, if I remember, there was even interference in that whole thing, where the government kind of effectively helped them in that sense. But anyway, no, that racism, and I think that's the point that you've made. I can't really refute because I don't know, without looking that up, I have to do some diving. But there's also the extraction. The other thing I wanted to touch on, and I think it was this MGK that was saying like, oh, okay, they do, bring 4,000 or 40,000 times more or whatever. I think this is where I guess me and the right fundamentally diverge, is because I don't think that that's possible. I do think that a person can probably, be 10 times better or 20 or maybe even 30 times. That it can be some obscene number. Like if I was to play against LeBron James and you were to quantify how much better he is than me, I'm sure he's fucking 30, 40, 50 times better than me at fucking basketball. But could LeBron James beat 4,000 of me at basketball? Like, no, I don't give a fuck. He's fucking LeBron James, bro. Like, he's 4,000. My point is, there gets to be a point where it's unrealistic to say that, just any ratio possible is quote unquote fair. Because in order for that person to generate that much, even if they're doing everything right, even if they're a fucking great CEO and they're handling shit and they're a fucking genius, in order for that business to run, they are still utilizing the labor of other people. And I get what you're saying.
Dwight, here's the issue, right? If the government stayed out of this, imagine the government stayed out of this. And imagine, let's say, a big company, like, let's say an Amazon or a Google or just a big company, right? If a company was not paying their employees enough, right? In a truly free market where we don't overregulate, if one company was just crushing it, the employees could go to work for a competitor. And if a competitor was, let's say, in second place, let's say there's a market where there's 4 players, right? Say there's 4 major players that can do a particular product or service, right? Like, that could realistically hit scale and do this. Let's say there's 4 players. If one was kicking everybody's ass, but was abusing their employees by not having the right work conditions, not paying them well enough, and the employees were upset about this, their competitors could go and find the most talented people amongst those employees and recruit them and pay them more and give them better benefits and better conditions. And by having the better people, you would innovate faster, you would make better products, you would be able to increase the value of what you're offering in the marketplace. And so I just have a hell of a lot more faith in the free market than I do in giving the decision making, because the question that you haven't answered is, if you think the CEO's ratio of pay is so out of whack with the employee, who do you think would make the most sense to have dominion over that company to say, moving forward, this is the cap? Who would you give the power to make those decisions? And where do they get the knowledge that they can intervene and make a decision on where that cap?
Yeah, I think that could be something, and of course, where we also differ is I'm obviously, pro government involvement to an extent, although not to the extent it is now. You have laws and regulations in place where maybe it's arranged. Maybe for a smaller business, ratio is like 9 to 1, or maybe if you have a business with 100,000 employees, maybe it's 100 to 1 or something like that. That we can have, we have economists, we have people that are way smarter than anybody in this room probably, that know all kinds of shit that can be utilized to help inform these decisions, so that the collective can make an informed.
So Dwight, why do you think it's important to compare the pay of these distinctly different jobs? Why do you think that's important?
What do you mean by that? Like different.
So let's talk Amazon, right? Just to give an example, you have Jeff Bezos has a lot of money. Amazon does a ton of different things. Started off very innocently enough as a online bookstore, for those that remember, and now they provide provide web services, they're hyperscaler that businesses build upon. And then they also have Prime Video. They also have a delivery service. Small business owners can use their platform to sell their products. Amazon also sells their own garbage. They do a lot of things. Which worker at Amazon do you think deserves a salary that is 1/9 of Jeff Bezos?
Like during the early times or now?
Now, do you think that there's that warehouse work at Amazon should be more highly compensated than warehouse work, let's say at some wholesale glass manufacturer for automobiles?
Well, yeah. If the company is worth a certain amount, like I don't see a reason why you couldn't have it where there's and maybe for this example we go with what you suggest, which is no minimum wage. So let's say even if there is, let's say there's a minimum amount that you have to pay people because whatever regulation or law, whatever. Okay, if you're at Amazon and the company is worth XYZ amount, well, the amount that the workers are able to be compensated can be scaled. And there's a lot of different ways you can achieve that. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a ratio of worker to CEO. It could be something like.
Dwight, what about the incentive structure for the employees? If you got a job, let's say as an entry-level warehouse worker in an Amazon warehouse, rather than soliciting that the government get involved and even out these ratios and take some of Bezos' pay and give it to the warehouse workers, what about the obtaining new skills and working in that warehouse? You go from lifting boxes to getting certified to drive the forklift, which is going to get you an increase in pay. You stick around, you get your cost of living adjustment. Maybe you're such a hard worker that they recognize you and they make you a shift supervisor. Eventually, you might even be managing the entire warehouse. I would recommend that any worker always look at how do I increase my value to the company I'm working for, or improve my knowledge, skills, and ability to make myself more marketable to another company that might pay me better, rather than thinking, I don't think I make enough money, it's unfair that that guy has money, maybe if the government got involved, I would have it better off. I think that you have far more control, and it's a much better system where you create incentives where the person that builds the best mousetrap and markets the mousetrap the best and sells the most mousetraps makes the most money, and the people that are helping them to manufacture it, to sell it, to distribute it, all of those things, they're going to get paid accordingly for the knowledge, skills, and ability they have. And so the incentive that you have is to just obtain the most marketable skills, the skills that pay the best.
Yeah, that was a lot.
If you want to make Jeff Bezos money, then what I would suggest is that you go and innovate something and start a business and scale it the way that Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, no, that would still apply. Like your pay would be based on your value to the company. So it just wouldn't be such a vast difference where you can have, one or two people taking such a high percentage of so many people's labor, paying them.
Why do you care?
Because to me, that would make more sense as far as one, an equitable society, two.
But hold on, who said an equitable society is fair? The whole notion of equality is unfair. If you want people to be treated equal, in order to do that, you have to put your hand on the scale. How is that fair to the business owner?
Right, and that's why I say equitable, not equal, because, I agree, like, equality is just not achievable. I don't think, even if we wanted to,
Why, really quickly, I want to ask you, actually not even going to ask a question, I'm just going to make a statement. Oftentimes I hear the arguments similar to yours coming from, like, I think it's a good place, but it's possibly misinformed by the idea that there is like a pie out there that is the money that can be divided up between at all, the pie can be made larger and larger, and oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, the compensation you're talking about, and then, like, you're skeptical of, which again, I understand if you're looking at it as a fixed, amount of resources. But what you have is that Jeff Bezos type who actually makes the pie so much bigger. And if under those circumstances, I'm just curious, but again, I'm not going to ask if that would change the way that you see this at all. Like perceiving that income as a resource is not limited to one pool that can never grow or shrink. It's actually quite the opposite. Shrinking would be devastating, and so having these decisions in the wrong hands would have some really terrible outcomes. You're already skeptical of government interference and the way that impacts our markets and how these corporations operate. So I'm just curious, thinking about that pie shrinking since it is not fixed, and knowing that government influence can have negative impacts on why you would want more, because you've already agreed that yes, you appreciate regulation, but you don't like some of the outcomes of it, and see if in fact, a Jeff Bezos type or someone in a position like that can actually make the pie much bigger so that there is actually more pie to go around. How it shifts your calculus. Again, you don't have to answer it. It's more of like a thought experiment.
Yeah,
because I feel like you're coming from a fixed pie place.
I definitely don't view it as fixed, and in fact, so basically, like if the Federal Reserve, right, wants to increase the amount of money in circulation, I forget the exact product. Like this is stuff like I am familiar with, but I don't.
Hold on. That's not. So we're talking.
Enough with it.
But hold on, just a second. Hold on. Before you start doing that, like I don't want you to bring the Federal Reserve into it, because we're talking about. Like if we just keep using Jeff Bezos, we're talking about an individual who innovates into a market, which was for your friend, it was book selling, and I remember being so excited because I was able to spend much less on books in college at the time. Anyway, we're talking about someone who is actually providing a good or service that people need, and that's what leads the income that can actually grow as it is today. We're not talking about printing money.
Well, what I'm saying is, when the pie expands, because you're talking about like production, but yeah, when the pie expands, both in terms of printing money and in terms of production, it still doesn't increase for the workers proportionately. Like that's why things are less affordable now. Like even when you account for inflation, things are less affordable
I really
now
can't get in there. I'm blocked.
for the typical person than say X number of years ago. So
This isn't true.
I mean,
Places as opposed to having one business does not make the it does not explain. It doesn't do what you're saying.
About a few months
so like because what I'm saying is I'm talking about so say for example like the typical person's like the median income today versus the median cost of a house.
I understand, but you're discussing something different, which is not what okay. So if you don't think that there is just one big pie out there, and that if Jeff Bezos takes $4 billion and he should have only taken one, that $3 billion have been taken out of the pockets of everybody else, and you think that pie isn't fixed, it can grow, it can shrink, etc. You don't need to go into inflation. You don't need to go into economic dynamics to.
Well, I get what you're saying. Oh, did we cut out? I can't. I don't know if y'all can hear. I can't hear.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if Kelly was done because it sounded like him. I didn't.
The conversation does not need to change. We don't need to start talking about the Fed. We don't need to start talking about inflation. We could, but I wasn't trying to bring in more topics. I was just suggesting that people who appreciate that there is a fixed pie look at this differently than people who appreciate that it can either grow or it can shrink.
Right. No, I agree on that. I wasn't trying to necessarily like
Let me explain it a different way. Okay. So when you say that you want to change the way that these ratios are allocated, if you were to do that, because you have to think about there's top line revenue, there's bottom line revenue, right? And if you were to take, and let's say we did what you recommended, which is like the ratio could only be 9:1. You have to look at, and this is why employees should never make these calls, and government should absolutely not make these calls, is that you don't have the visibility into where that money would have been allocated otherwise. Like under the current system, they allocate money towards research and development of new products, to optimize and reduce the expense for the current products that they sell, to make the company even more profitable, and to be able to expand the business, which creates more jobs, which actually benefits the economy. By creating jobs, they're doing their part. When you make this demand, you are essentially going to impact the business in a way that makes it less competitive, because they now have to spend the money on higher labor costs, so they're not going to have the same R&D. They're not going to be able to innovate in the same way that they would otherwise by allocating these dollars. And so I think the fact that if the business is running with the cost of labor that they have, the only time I think that you would have a reasonable case to increase the labor is if you had really poor morale and the labor was ineffective. Then maybe you could say, hey, we need to look at the conditions in which they work in. Maybe we need to, hire a higher caliber of employee. All of those types of things. And labor costs could go up if labor is the issue. But if they're making all this money with the labor that they have, labor is not the problem. And I think what's selfish is the idea of, hey, we should take more from the guy at the top to distribute to these people, despite knowing that by doing that, you reduce the chance of creating more jobs for other people. And so this is why I would always leave the decision making in the hands of the creator.
I'll jump in here real quick if that's all right. Yeah, I wanted to give some pushback to the idea of the LeBron James analogy and other forms of physical labor compared to a CEO. And I'm going to justify the idea that maybe a CEO does produce 4,000 times the value. But here's the thing: when it comes to the LeBron analogy, you mentioned playing 101. The issue is that he's capped by a body, right? And same thing when it comes to employees that do physical labor. They're capped by the physical labor that they produce, right? But the issue, and here's why I think it doesn't make any sense to compare them, is because I think it's two different planes of value. Meaning, physical labor is really dependent mostly on effort, right? But when it comes to a CEO, they're not necessarily doing physical labor. They don't really get paid for that, but it's more like they get paid for the impact of their decisions and how they leverage that over massive multi national organizations, right? So it's kind of unfair to how can I put it, compare how much a CEO is making to an employee when the reason why they're getting paid are very different reasons. And it's like, look, maybe it's not that the CEO is doing 4 times the labor, but just the fact that their decisions sort of affect thousands of employees, the millions
Well,
of hours.
it's bigger than that, and I just want to insert this, and please continue. I would make the argument that Jeff Bezos is 1.5 million times more valuable than each one of his employees, because he has created jobs for 1.5 million people, whereas the people that are working for him have created no jobs. And so the mere fact that he's employed 1.5 million people, yes, he's absolutely worth more money than any of the people that work.
I totally agree. When you think about a business, it's sort of like the centralization of value. You're giving value to the customer, to the employees that you're hiring. Maybe you're giving them benefits, way to feed their family. You're giving value to the shareholder and you're giving value so much to the point that it's the value that you're giving and people wanting that value over their own dollars is what creates the the large sum of money that CEOs get paid. So it's sort of like they get paid so much because they provide so much value, and then the second they stop providing that value, then we get to put it somewhere else. So I think in that sense, it's sort of like, and this is why I said fair in a chat before, which is like, look, this seems like if everybody is sort of like someone describing increasing the slice of the pie, so more people can get the slice of the pie, and theirs is bigger despite everyone still getting a slice of the pie, and everyone agreed to the roles that they're in, right? They're all doing this through voluntary participation. It seems like that seems pretty fair to me. And it's like, look, if everyone agreed to, the income that they're making at this job, it's like, I feel kind of weird being the person sort of stepping in between someone and sort of getting in between a salary that they agree to with their own volition and things like that. So it seems to me that that it's totally fair that the CEO gets paid more, and I think that it's justified in the value that they provide because it's just their decisions are just affecting a lot more people, billions of capital, whereas an employee, even though look, they're doing a really useful job, right? But it's like the impact of their labor, depending on a job, really, it's sort of it's just not as big as a single decision that a CEO can make that affects billions of capital.
Also, too, like when you look at this, the accountability factor, like which everybody's just not bringing up. I'm gonna go back because I know somebody in my life that really loved Pottery Barn, or not Pottery. It was Pure One Imports, whatever that fucking company.
It wasn't a man. It wasn't a man, baby. Go ahead.
I know. But this person I really loved me, and I loved her. But she loved Pier 1. Pier 1 went out of business. And the overall issue was that they couldn't compete, they couldn't develop. And everybody was screaming about the jobs, everybody was upset because this institution was going away. They called it a must save. And they blamed who? The board, the CEO, everybody in leadership. Not one employee took accountability. There was an employee up there going, you know what? I failed Pier 1 because I couldn't sell enough items. I couldn't keep us in the black. I couldn't keep us moving. You never hear that from employees. And this like delusion of grandeur that you're somehow bigger than the other parts that are needed to run through. Someone has to steer the ship. Someone has to give the commands. And someone has to take the accountability. But it just seems like, and whenever I hear these equity, Jeff Bezos should be making, what was it, 9 times, or the employee should be making, 1/9 of his salary or something like that.
Which and I believe the pushback was 100 times. CEO should be making 100 times.
Okay, so out there. Right, you should actually look up what Jeff Bezos' salary is from Amazon. I believe it's like $85,000-$90,000. I think they pay him $1.5 million for security through Amazon to make sure he's not killed or knocked off or somebody buying that.
Yeah, but that's not how he makes money. He makes money through shares.
Yeah, he makes money through his shares. He makes all of it through his investments in building the brands and doing all of that. That creates those jobs, like Roger said, and what Kelly was going to. I never hear the employees on the lower rung, like a Starbucks worker, going, I'm accountable because Starbucks had a bad quarter. It's my fault because I couldn't sell a pumpkin spice latte to some fucking princess driving an SUV. You never hear that. You never, it's really weird to me that workers will never take accountability, but they want all the perks. And they'll never put forth the amount of effort, energy, and have a vision to actually propel it ahead, which is why you'll have 1 in 1,000 rise to the top. They'll become a leader, they'll become a manager, supervisor, director, whatever. They'll always rise up because those are the ones that are willing to take the accountability, the responsibility, steer it in a direction, and keep pushing and keep driving. While the rest I'm going to be honest, a lot of workers are just not there. I would not give $1 billion to a fucking fry cook at McDonald's because the McDonald's CEO makes a fucking fortune. It wouldn't make sense in this world. How you would ever computate that, I don't know.
Well, again, go ahead.
I just go back to the question of there's two fundamental questions. One, why would we want to externally, enforce any type of cap on what somebody can earn? the CEO could pay an employee if they choose to, and I don't understand why we want to institute a cap on the CEO. Which, by the way, CEOs don't decide what their own pay is. That's decided by the board anyway. So yes, they have a big say in it, and but you get paid. You negotiate these things. Some people want a $1 salary and they want more equity. He wouldn't be making that much money if he hadn't created the value that he has. One of the biggest things that he's creating is jobs itself. And I think it's interesting that the laborers or the people that don't even work there are the ones that want to give their opinion that somehow he needs to share his money with share more of what he's making with others, when the money that gets allocated for labor is adequate to keep the company going and to innovate and release new products, which creates more jobs, expands into new places. I mean, they're a global company that's employing 1.5 million people, and you want to impart your wisdom on how they might do it more fairly. And your idea of fair is that the person that's steered this ship make less money.
Yeah, hello everybody. I just got here.
Well, hold on, before you
Oh, sure.
Moose, I think I spoke over Moose. Moose, go ahead, and then we'll.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah. Right. So I got it. The CEOs, they take the glory and they take the brunt of the, if it's a failure, it's on the CEO, right? They have to answer to the board, stockholders, and all that. But so, like with Brad's example, though, of tier one, when you're saying that, well, where were the employees to help out tier one? I mean, I'm going to guess that the average, let's say 20 something, even college students, single mom, whatever the demographic is that work at the stores, they have absolutely no idea of the magic behind the corporate curve. The average employee not only doesn't have any say in what stores should open or close, they have no say even on their own schedule. I'm sorry, are you coming off mic? I'm almost done. Sorry, if you could wait till I finish, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. So that's what I'm saying. So it's at the end of the day, you're saying, well, where are the employees that could have saved, Pier 1? Well, what about all the executives and high-up managers that made obviously bad decisions about locations of stores, how much commerce to try to do online, product placement, the pricing, all that. And they have no say in that whatsoever. They're trying to, I think, at the end of the day, fight for their benefits. Fight for proper overtime, which actually always regulated on the up and up. So I think I hear you, Blakes. Yes, a lot of CEOs, deserve the credit for their success. However, I don't know that the employees can really be put. I don't think it's one size fits all. I think generally the way it goes, if morale is in the toilet, it will slowly be reflected on the front line with customer service, right? And then the worse the customer service is, people start going elsewhere. But employees who do feel empowered by their executives, who do feel empowered by the managers on the floor, will again have the reverse effect. Folks will be coming in more. You get that repeat business. It's you have to empower your employees at some point. I'm not saying you have to give them every little thing they want, but come to the table and be fair.
Yeah, so real quick, I just want to insert this, and then I know Steve's got to jump in too, then you can go, Brad. But just real quickly, I agree that if there is an issue with with employee morale and productivity, you should do some honest inspecting of what you can do that would improve the morale, the productivity, all of those things. And sometimes pay, sometimes benefits, sometimes it's just the environment, sometimes it's the culture and the way that you treat the employees. There's a lot of things that you can do, and I think good companies do work on that. Some companies, though, have a problem where they've got so many applicants that they have a culture where they'll treat their employees like shit, because if the person quits, they've got 100,000 people that want to take the job. But the reason why you don't want to overcorrect and fix that problem is because you have to remember, if there's a lot of applicants for that job is easy to find people to do. And so I don't advocate for treating those people like shit. In fact, I would advocate for enabling them to feel as good as they can about the job that they have, so they can be as productive as they can for you. But the question still comes down to, who should make that decision? And I wish that this app had a polling feature where we could ask the people in the chat and on the stage, do you think the government should decide these things? Do you think the company should decide these things? Do you think the employees that are in question should decide these things? Or do you think it's a combination of those things? My answer would be clear on that. But I'd be interested if you guys want to engage in the chat on this, of who you think should make that decision. And I know Steve wants to jump in, and then Brad wants to go, and I'm sure Moose wants to reply to what's being said. So let's go Steve, Brad, and then back.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Firstly, Starbucks was mentioned briefly on Starbucks. They arguably have a CBA, a collective bargaining agreement. I think their average barista gets $30 an hour, plus PTO, paid time off. They also get benefits up the gazoo, and that's just for pouring coffee, $30 an hour. As far as Jeff Bezos, as we all know, he started the company in his fucking garage with his wife, and as Roger correctly said, he now employs or has over 1.5 million people working for him. So how much should he be entitled to? I agree with Roger that I don't think people should have a limit put on their value. People are paid what they are worth. He employs 1.5 million people. Well, let's cut it down by 90%. Let's give him 150,000% more than, you know what? Let's bring it down 99%. He employs 1.5 million people. Let's give him 15,000 times what everybody else makes. But is that unfair based on those numbers? I also wanted to land with this. I know that Costco managers make anywhere between 100 and 150 grand a year, plus benefits, plus stock options. Costco employees.
Steve, can I just insert this?
Sure.
Costco also has an industry-leading 7% employee match on their 401k.
Absolutely. And for those of you that have the option of a 401k match, and you're not putting in at least the amount of the match, you are a financial idiot. If your company offers a match, and mine does, you're throwing away 100% investment on your money, tax-free, if you don't put up the match. But back to Costco. Costco managers make anywhere from between 100 and 180 grand a year, plus the match, plus stock options, plus benefits up the gazoo. Their employees are entitled to profit sharing and benefits, and I believe they make like $25-30 an hour. So are the managers not entitled to make more than, twice as much as the people that they're responsible for? Oh, they also get bonus for their manager location depending on the profits. I believe people are paid their worth. I do not believe anybody is underpaid or overpaid their worth, because if you're underpaid, go get another job at what you are paid. And Roger, thank you.
Yeah, I want to just add something to the Costco thing, because it's an interesting study. They have a culture where they almost exclusively promote from within. It is very difficult to get into their leadership ranks without being an entry-level employee. Almost everybody gets promoted from within, which makes the culture very strong because you don't have to worry about working really hard and some outsider comes in and because they went to the right school or know the right person, they're going to get that job. There's still going to be some nepotism within the ecosystem of the store itself, but they also have a relationship with their customers. So they treat their employees right. That's number one. The customers, since 1985, they've been offering a hot dog and a soda for $1.50. Now, I don't necessarily know the health impact of what they're doing to their customers, but financially, they've kept that at a loss for a long time, and they're going to continue to do that. In fact, when the former CEO left, he made a joke about if they raised the price of the hot dog and the soda, he would kill the new CEO. And so, like, they are dedicated to the relationship they have with their customers, and they have a culture of taking care of their employees, promoting from within, all of those types of things. And I don't think it's a secret to anyone, but most retail is so adversely affected by online shopping. But if you go to Costco any day of the week, that parking lot is fucking full. I don't care what Costco it is, anywhere in the country. They are doing something right with their employees. They're doing something right for their shareholders. I don't know if you've seen what their stock has done over these years. Everybody benefits because I think Costco is one of the best examples in U.S. history of a company with alignment between protecting the value for shareholders, protecting the value for employees, protecting the value for customers. I think that's a model that other companies should follow. But if you look at all the companies that don't do that have come and gone over the years, I think it's an excellent example for us to look at of why it's good to take care of your customers and your employees.
And before Brett goes, very quickly, another example is Trader Joe's. Now, I know nothing about the stock end of Trader Joe's, but I know that most employees of Trader Joe's are happy. Most customers like me of Trader Joe's are happy. They do not hire, they do not have a CBA with a union. All of their employees are non-union, and they hire from mostly, like Roger said with Costco, they hire from within. Trader Joe's is another good example.
So I was just going to go back to Moose's point when he was talking about Pier 1, and I wanted to bring up another example. It was Antiocho, whatever. He was the CEO of Blockbuster, and he was the CEO before Keys took over and basically ran it into the ground. And he brought out a lot of visions. He wanted to put Blockbuster on to compete with Netflix and other online platforms. He wanted to take Blockbuster Music, which was the thing back in the day, and put it on to compete with iTunes, etc., all the other ones that were running out. And he ended up working and buying Viacom, or Viacom buying them in the music industry. This man faced internal pressure from not just the board, but from people within the company, other investors who said it was just a joke because Blockbuster was Blockbuster. This guy saw the writing on the wall. And because of these internal disputes, because of employees beneath him that circumvented him, challenged his authority, challenged his decisions, challenged his vision, the company was already in a decline. To revitalize it by meeting with the other markets that were emerging, and they pushed back on him so hard, it led to their own demise, where Keys comes in and basically rolled back all of Antiocho's new program and they just rolled back all those decisions, and then all of a sudden Blockbuster fucking disappeared. All those employees lost a job because they didn't agree with the CEO's decision of where they needed to go for the future. Gives me a prime case in point that employees should never really, it's hard to say that they should have that much a say in the overall control of the company, because we've watched too many companies over the years, like a Blockbuster, fall because you had the employees revolt against leadership, revolt against vision that they don't understand. They don't look at the landscape the same way. They only look at the narrow boat of their Monday through Friday job and what their paycheck is going to bring home.
shares.
Yeah.
As Pink Floyd once asked the eternal question, is there anybody out there? Or am I in the Matrix?
No, I hear you.
You
I
know,
can hear you.
I'm here for 5. I'm here for 5 minutes. I have a meeting with my boss.
Gotcha. Steve, I was curious, before you run, before you have to go to your meeting, and I don't know, the hourly rate, because all I could find for Starbucks was $15, $16 an hour with $19 for like a shift manager. I was wondering if the $30 an hour rate that you mentioned earlier, does that include stock?
Well, tell you what, I guess I better do some heavy lifting. Don't stop talking, but I'll be back in two.
No worries, but to the question of the room, of the room title, I will say, indubitably, I don't know who I'm guessing, who are the guys, Paul and Rohan, I guess, that started this app. I've read multiple articles, I think, others have too, that they, during the pandemic was their golden, they had the golden goose. They had a captive audience, brilliant idea, didn't really have competition at that time. And I think they were valued at least $1 billion at one point during the pandemic. The owners passed. They figured it would just, what could possibly go wrong? It can only go up from here. So now we see them kind of doing different things. I think symptoms of a ship in trouble is just throwing paint at the wall. Kind of how they did with changing the hallway dramatically, changing, I think, moderation powers. And of course, the biggest one that we've all seen is this weird monthly subscription, all paid $5, right? God knows we've all spent $5 a month on far worse things. But what are we like? So to me, as a consumer, sure, it's like Moose, you can't complain. We're getting this for free. Sure, to what extent though? Because I intuitively thought that, okay, now they're actually going to start offering perks like being a creep and being anonymous, where you cannot participate in chat, you cannot go on the stage, and the mod cannot kick you out. Now, I know a lot of folks have been freaking out, like, we all saw in season 1 of Clubhouse, capital letters, regardless of what your political affiliation was, everyone had in their profile, I do not consent to being recorded. Well, you actually do. The T's and C's on this app, I think, Roger, you were talking about this last night, you've all consented. Like, I couldn't possibly imagine anything I'd say on Clubhouse to come back, if I'm going to run for a political office, and my opponent is going to mudsling me with, Lewis, you were talking about Starbucks salaries, and, we got a clip right here. Like, I don't know why people would really care what you're being, unless you're saying, like, some really far, crazy, extremely stuff, or obviously anything related to pedophilia that you might have been involved with, obviously, right, the obvious things that nobody should be saying out loud in general, let alone on an app. But for me, intuitively, I don't care if you're charging $1 a month or $100 a month. If you are now charging your customers, that means your expectation of your customers and your consumers has gone up, obviously, which means intuitively on the balance of that, our expectations of the plethora of bugs on this app need to be addressed. I'm sure many of you, I don't think it's just a droid thing. The fact that you still have like that little indicator that you have new messages, and I know first world problems, but the fact that we still have an indicator if you have new messages when you don't, The fact that you can delete some back channel messages, but others you cannot, and for some reason you can delete some, and for some reason you can unsubscribe from other chats is absolutely wild to me. I honestly think a high school coder with basic coding and engineer skills could fix these bugs. So I'm going to have to point the problems to those folks. Again, I'm not saying those two individuals, but whomever they have empowered to address these sort of bugs. Apparently, they're not high on their priority, but I absolutely have no problem with people recording me. I know everyone's up in arms, people freaking out. Oh, no, this non-person is streaming us on YouTube. Great. Who cares? Like, we're in a world now on social media where you have no rights. Like, well, we all click on that little T and C box, but we don't read the 25 pages of microscopic lettering that enables us to use the app. We're just like, oh, let me just use it. So anyway, I don't know if anyone else has a similar frustration of, like, for example, the new message indicator.
Well, Moose, I wanted to get back to you. I'm sorry to interrupt. So, Moose, I was wrong. You were actually correct. I put it in the group chat. It appears that the average wage of Starbucks is $16 to $19 an hour, but if you include all the paid time off, you include the option to be paid for your schooling and education and all the other benefits, they say it averages out to about $30 an hour, but the average pay is $16 to $19. And on the Clubhouse thing, before I go, I didn't hear what was said prior to 15, 20 minutes ago, but it is a documented fact that Clubhouse started with an initial infusion of $100 million. It was a couple of months after that, another $300 million. So they've had a capital infusion of a total of $400 million. And as far as I'm aware to date, they have not taken in one single dollar of profit. Yeah, you know what, Marcos, go on mute or I have to drop the thank you. As far as I'm aware, Clubhouse has not declared one single dollar of gross profit, but they did start out with $100 million and then another $300 million for a total of $400 million. Business has been running 5 years now. Just a question, how do you run a business for 5 years and not have a single dollar of gross profit? Forget about net profit, gross profit. And thanks, you guys. It's been fun.
Thank you, Steve.
Well, I'll say this. I don't think Clubhouse is ruined. I like Clubhouse. And I'll also say, present company excluded, but the biggest people complaining about who ruined Clubhouse are the fucking biggest grifters on this app. And I'll stand on my square on that shit.
I think it's interesting. Clearly, when the money runs out, Clubhouse will be gone, or they'll get bought by someone else that may or may not decide to keep it going. You can't keep it going forever if you're not making money. That's first and foremost. As far as is it a dying app? The numbers suggest that it's. Depending on the snapshot that you want to start from, is it a dying app? Absolutely. The peak of April 2021 was a long time ago. And so maybe if you started with like a starting point of January 2025, maybe they're picking up a little bit of momentum, but they're nowhere near where they were in the early part of 2021. And it's funny that Paul and Rowan had said themselves, which is an interesting thing to say. Our biggest problem was we grew too fast.
I remember when they said that, yeah.
Yeah, and now, that wasn't their biggest problem. Their biggest problem was the growth that they had was caused by people being on lockdown, and they had no plan to continue the momentum. Their lack of creativity on how to drive people to the app without a pandemic happening, that is on them. Their inability ability to market or incentivize the people to share. The other thing that I think that people don't talk about enough is that those of us that have been on this app, we should be, in theory, the biggest advocates for telling people about this app. But almost everybody that I know on this app, they don't want their family and friends on here for multiple reasons. This app can be crazy. And the content that we get into, these conversations that can be contentious and people are saying outlandish shit, they don't want their family and friends. They certainly don't want their coworkers. They don't want them anywhere near this app. And there's no real way that I can think of cleaning that up, because the things that we all enjoy about it is the unfettered nature of these conversations. And I don't think the rest of the world is ready for it. I think that we're these we have this weird obsession with these unfettered conversations. Most people would be too shocked; they wouldn't be able to handle it, and that's why a lot of people left. And it's why celebrities will never come back. When you have guys that comedians should be quick-witted and be able to respond to people and deal with hecklers and whatnot. Kevin Hart, one of the most successful comedians of all time, he got packed up on a Clubhouse stage. And I think that's a world that celebrities are not ready for. And if you were the manager of a celebrity and you knew stories about what happened to Brett Weinstein, what happened to Kevin Hart, you would probably demand of the people that you manage, don't go anywhere near that fucking app. And so they're not going to get the celebrities. We're not going to invite our family and friends. So I don't really know what their growth strategy is. I really don't know what they're doing. Go for it.
If you were an executive producer of a TV show that had 10 million viewers a week, would you consider that successful?
It depends. If it had 50 million the prior week, no.
Okay, but it consistently has 10 million, because that's advertising money. And even though Clubhouse doesn't advertise, this app still has 10 million active users a week worldwide. Here's the thing. We've been pigeonholed into these corners of Clubhouse. But like if you look through your algorithm, you look through your streets, right? Bro, there is Persian rooms that have 5,000-6,000 people in it at a time.
Are you going to go in there and learn Persian?
Not at all. But what I will do is we should try to expand our audience and see and tap into the 10 million active users, which is just my opinion.
Well, the biggest growth on this app, and it's started a couple of years ago, was when it went live in India. If you think about what this app could allow you to do in terms of, I mean, you could have, you can get rid of your fucking phone bill if you really wanted to. You can certainly get rid of apps that, like Zoom and things like that, where you do conferencing. You can set up rooms to have these conversations. There's a lot of use cases that you could do. And in India, I think they are doing it. But I don't think for American audiences, I think the peak will never get back to the level that it was. I think 2021, that was the apex for the American audience. And I don't know about you, but I wouldn't know what to do going into an Indian room other than maybe ask them for a recipe for lamb vindaloo. I mean, like, I just don't know.
I just want to say this. When I first came on the app, there were significantly more Europeans than I do now. I find it rare, like outside of the one crazy front guy, you never hear of anybody from France. You really don't hear that. And you'll get some English people on here, but it used to be an Irish contingent and a Scottish one. But you don't really hear the Germans, except for Hans, who comes in on occasion and runs some weird room. And then you've got, none of the other, like no real Spanish users on here. They're usually Hispanic in nature, mostly Hispanic American. And so maybe some Caribbeans, but you don't really have the global expansion that it could offer. The Indians were the biggest boom as far as an outside America presence. And even they have, I would say, what you'd say, Roger, have gone down to like an eighth of what they were originally. They're not as big as it used to be. And I have somebody say that they're, you know, going to dig your wife up and fuck her. You've got to have all of that shit. I mean, you've got to be able to take it and then just like be able to dish it right back. You've got to be quick with it, and you just have to be strong. And I think what we overestimated was the strength of a lot of people that came to Clubhouse. All these stars that were there, they just didn't have the ability to stand up to a direct verbal confrontation.
That's true. You have to have a thick skin for Clubhouse, and you know, I don't know, Brad. Like regarding the celebrity thing, I think at the end of the day, as far as anyone who doesn't want it, you know, when I was going on my rant about like, well, who cares if this room right now that we're in is being streamed on YouTube? But for a celebrity, or especially if they have a recognizable voice, I mean, honestly, the only celebrity I still see once in a while, is the guy who played. I don't know anyone familiar with The Wire. The guy who played the lawyer for one or two of the gangsters.
What about Justine
I
Bateman?
think
She's still
it's also just perhaps like the toxic masculinity that has
Oh, come on.
I know this place.
unfortunately.
Well, actually, I wasn't done yet. I just wanted to real quick if I could finish.
Don't kick her. Don't kick her, please. Whoever. Don't kick her.
Yeah, let's have some entertainment. But so to JP, to your point, I don't deny that there's 10 million users worldwide. That's traffic. If they're going to try to finally dump this app once and for all and find some sucker, I mean, some a spirited entrepreneur wants to turn this thing around. But like Dwight put in the chat, I see like 15, 20 rooms in my hallways on the regular, and not just like the people that I'm following or sort of topics that I like. Like for example, I don't follow anyone in Biblical Smoke. Maybe I made the mistake of going to one of their rooms to see what is the attraction. How are these guys getting 700-900 people on the regular? Like if Biblical Smoke has like 200 people, I'm like, wow, slow day. So I see a lot of the religious rooms that attract a good number of audiences, if you will, and the other ones are like these Eritrean political rooms that have like a few hundred on the regular. But again, I don't understand how they can't just fix the basic bugs. I know it's like first world problems. Am I being too high maintenance to say Clubhouse, Rohan, Paul, please have your engineers just spend an extra hour and just fix that bug where it indicates you have messages when you don't, or is that just another shiny thing they want to keep engaging with us?
Moose, let me just say something. 2 seconds. Victoria, you can give your toxic femininity all you want. I don't really give a shit. But just want to say, breaking news, Kamala Harris has said she will not be running for California governor, which says to me she's going to be running in 2028. Okay, Victoria, let's hear.
Wait, hold on before Victoria goes.
Sorry.
Hold on before Victoria goes. That's for the month of June. From June 1st through June 22nd of 2025, 80% of global Clubhouse downloads for that period came from India. Now, if that's consistent across the board, that's crazy. They're by far the largest, and everybody knows that. But that's 80% from June 1st to June 22nd. That's a 3-week period where 80% of the downloads came from India. This app may fucking thrive after all, but it's not gonna be an American.
Do they have a reason for that? Do they have a reason for that?
Oh, hold on a second. Sam, we gotta go to Victoria, otherwise she'll cry the whole room.
I was just trying to follow up on what.
Yeah, and really quick, Victoria, I appreciate your patience. Just a deeper question for anyone in the room.
Moose,
Yeah.
please let the lady go.
She's been waiting. Fair enough. Go ahead, ladies first. Go ahead. Go for it, Liz.
Victoria, do you want to cry?
No, I think if we look at who ruined Clubhouse, like you're already leading with a preposition, like you're the premise of something being ruined. I personally found many rooms with people from different European countries, different Asian countries, and I had travel rooms Chinese idiom
We
rooms,
get it,
where
we
we met
get it,
people
we
from
get it, we
countries.
get it. American men are bad. We're bad people. Get it.
But I think what, unfortunately, like what we're seeing is a reflection of sometimes having too many people in a party doesn't make the party better. And I think where Clubhouse started to decline was unfortunately like not making it invite only, not making people responsible. People can just create profiles like myself, for example, because you no longer want the attachment to the other followers, for example.
So, hold on a second.
Go ahead, sir. Yeah, go ahead.
Dismal, I have a question for you, and I just need some clarification. I need your own words on this. Did you state that you worked as a presidential advisor across 3 administrations?
No, I've.
She said she